Kia ora, and welcome to another episode of Under the Hood, second one. And today we've got none other than Dave. How's it going, Dave?
Excellent, Keegs. How you doing today?
Yeah, great, great. I've been looking forward to this one. It's been one we've kind of been talking about lining up for a little while. Yeah, and I think some of the things we're going to talk about, the future pipeline of things. It'd be good to try get ahead on some of this stuff. Um,
Yeah,
yeah,
you got. I just want to congratulate you on your show. I think it's great that you're doing this. I love your focus on things like governance and the DAO and all the you really get into that, and I think the community actually needs that. So, congratulations on getting it going, and I think it's going to be a show that may even rival the People's Guild. Don't tell Jingles I said that, but you know. He doesn't like it when I bash him, but
well, at least some people listen to the People's Guild now, so that's a good.
yeah, that's true. He does have a few people that listen.
Yeah, I see a couple likes. Yeah, well, I think that, so often at the moment we're just so reliant on or expecting the company to kind of do any of the proposals. And so many of them, I think, actually fit under the DAO. So hopefully we can start doing them, freeing up the team's time a bit more to focus on actually implementing some of these things as well. But of course, always get the team's feedback on it before we just volunteer you for something that is going to be, months of dev work or anything ridiculous like that.
Yeah, most of the time for us, like I don't mind getting involved with the proposals, if we can help, right? Definitely if it's something that's like contradicts something that we're doing, it's always helpful to mention it to us. But uh I'd say the only thing that I really even like, I love our community. I mean, I think our community as a whole, is going to make great decisions. I think sometimes some of the proposals get to where, it's a divisive issue, and then there's one group on one side and one group on the other. And I don't think we've matured yet to the point where we like have like political parties or something where it can be channeled in a way that where there could be some negotiation and stuff like that. So I think people get really anxious and upset, but I think that's also a maturing process. So I think we're coming along. We've come a long way since where we were when we first started, and I'm sure it's going to continue to move at a great pace, especially with stuff like what you're doing.
Yeah, well, I think what we're up to 250 odd proposals already, right? Like that's quite a lot for how long we've actually had this available, really. Yeah, and I think that's one thing we really have to work on. Like, how do we better handle those divisive conversations? Like, I'm hoping some of the constitutional stuff will help with that. Kind of give us a bit of a north star to kind of focus on. But even coming to an agreement on that, I think is going to be a fun task. I've kind of got it as a slow burning kind of project. As people come on here, ask more and more, and just get more feedback on what people think should be included. I don't think it's not something game changing, but I think it's something that will really help us long term. And so, yeah, is there anything that you think would be important to have or maybe be wary of when setting up a constitutional doc for the DAO?
Um, I'd have to see what you have in mind. I mean, obviously, I understand what the U.S. Constitution is, but that doesn't mean that everybody has that kind of thought when they say Constitution. So I'd like to see what you guys, come up with. But the concept of, you know, for instance, the two-thirds, majorities needed to pass something like, I think that's great. I would hate to ever see that changed. If it was a straight, majority vote, then I
Mm.
think there would be a lot more anxiousness, so, and a lot of times people don't understand, you know, like the reason for that is it makes people comfortable. And if you make people comfortable, then you get a much stronger base of people. Like imagine somebody putting in, two, three, $400,000, as a player, and then they feel like it could just easily on a whim, change, then they're less comfortable and they don't have as much confidence in the long term. Whereas having a two-thirds majority is a big deal. So I'm not sure what else you would want to put in there, but I know one thing I would like to see is sort of a coalescence around like-minded people in the real world. I don't know your system over there. You're in New Zealand, right? Is that right, Keith?
Yeah, that's the one.
So, I don't know if you guys have political parties, but here we only have two. But in Europe they have many. But
Yeah,
really,
we
the idea or the concept behind it is not necessarily the having career politicians, on the dole type thing. But in reality, what it should be is it should be, people that represent certain things that are known to be strong. Like, for instance, you're uh, a person who's strong on governance and, things like that. Like that's your big deal. And maybe there's, people in our community that don't know that much about that, but they like how you think, they like what you say. I would love to have a situation, where they could delegate, their vote to you, so that you represent more than just yourself, if that makes sense.
well, it's kind of
At some point, I think that would be a big deal.
yeah. I think that'd be very good. We've briefly touched on that in the past, and I think yeah, I think that delegation of voting would be like super useful. We kind of have it already, not that we're using it with the validators, right? There's a system where people add their SPS, I think up to 10 people to as the top validators. And so I imagine that it shouldn't be too hard to do something similar for the voting. It will take some dev time, and I don't know if it's something necessarily that has to be done on the Hive side or our side. But I think, yeah, like you said, it would be such a useful tool. Like one of the questions I struggle with often is how do we encourage like engagement and governance, but without like kind of corrupting it? One way it was like, oh, what incentive could we put in place for people to like, if you vote, you get a voucher or whatever. But the issue with that then is people are just going to vote on whatever. They're not going to actually get engaged. It's like, how do you meaningfully get them engaged? And because it's not a high percentage that actually votes on each of the proposals, right? And so that's another way that we can hopefully get a more representative view of what the community thinks if we had that kind of voting delegation.
Yeah. Also, I think the reason why it's more important than the actual voting is when it comes to like negotiation or, for instance, when you have two people on two well-meaning, sides to a particular issue, a lot of times, it's complicated, right? Like a solution isn't A or B, it's neither A nor B, it's part of A, part of B, right? To come up with a completely new solution. The people at that table, have to like carry some weight in terms of, like, why am I spending time talking to, you know, Keegs, for instance. I mean, I'm just using your name, but oh well, Keegs has 100 people backing him, right? 100 people that have delegated. So of course we need to listen to Keegs, not just because Keegs is smart, but also because a lot of people trust him and trust his voice. And it's not only about SPS; it's also about like minds, right? Like there are people, and of course, in that kind of system, you could always change, who you support if you don't like a guy that's, doing your thing. But I think it would actually increase the ability to, find solutions because, like I said, it's not just A and it's not just B. So you need to have sit down and go through like, okay, what's the pros, what's the cons, what can you live with? And it's like you can't do that on Discord, right? You can't just put out a proposal and expect in the comments on the PD that, you're going to find any kind of solution. So that requires like people that are engaged, that have a certain degree of support, and then people that are that represent those groups are willing to roll up their sleeves and try to find solutions. So
Mm-hmm.
I hope we
Yeah.
get there. I think we will. Honestly, I think it's just a matter of time. And again, I don't think that means that on something like that, at this point, we're talking about actually making it like automatic and within the system. But having
Mhm.
said that, I mean, it could be something as simple as, like what does Keeks think, right? And so Keeks comes out and he posts like, here's my thoughts on this particular issue, right? And then all the people that like you, maybe they don't automatically vote your way, but they can go read what you say, for instance, that kind of thing.
Yeah, one I kind of mentioned as well in the past is like previously having Discord channels, for certain groups. So it could be a way that hey, this is what's coming up with a proposal. This is what I think is good. This is my concern or whatever. And so it's just an easier way to pass that information on. Because I feel that a lot, especially with how infrequent the town halls are now. Right, when it was weekly, it was so easy to have a quick discussion on any of the proposals that came up. But now I don't even think if we do, we barely touch on them unless it's like a team kind of driven proposal. And if it's still relevant, we might have one come and go in between town halls and you don't even mention it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
It also kind of helps with, it's the same reason that people go and talk to people like Vaktis or Brave Tofu before they try put a proposal through, is because they need that kind of support. And when you talk to those kind of significant players and, potentially significant groups in the future, I think, it's important to have that conversation so that you're on the same page, or, you can make those tweaks to get that mix that works for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing I think that does too is, initially there was a sort of an anti-whale negativity that flowed out there, like, oh, this is just going to be the whales making decisions, right? They're always going to vote together. There's this backroom, cabal thing where, they're all like in cahoots. And in reality, nobody's going to tell Azircon what to do. Nobody's going to tell Brave Tofu what to do. Nobody's going to tell Bunctus what to do. I mean, they're all three legitimate businessmen in the real world with a lot of money invested in the game, and they're never going to make a decision that hasn't been thought through and they don't believe is in the interest of the game. So none of them ever have bad motives, not those three at least. Maybe there's a guy we don't know about that snuck in there, but so in those guys' cases, you're right. People go to them and say, hey, what do you think? Right. And the reason why is because it's pretty simple. They got a lot of votes. Mm-hmm. Right. But having said that, I can tell you that all three of those guys have at one time or another cared about not necessarily the votes. Like, they know they got the votes to pass. What they don't have is maybe the support of the masses, so to speak. Right. Like what is, and I'll just make up like a name like, Billie Jean, think, and Billy Bob, and, all these different people that we don't know, right? Or don't communicate with, and maybe don't have, 100,000 SPS. Maybe they only got 15,000 SPS. But if you had 100 of them and then they had like somebody representing them, well, I can guarantee you every single whale in the game would care, what does that group think of this? Right? Because nobody really wants to make the game so that the little guy doesn't survive. I mean, we all understand that the little guy's got to be happy and enjoy. And like, I say it all the time, I'm trying to build a game, a funnel where we attract and retain people, right? At the very beginning, we put in a whole free to play version. So of course, somebody with $10 is important. Right? Because it's not just one guy that has $10. Hopefully there's millions of guys that have $10. So, and I think those guys understand it. And again, figuring out how to channel it, I think that's why I think it would be great if we could figure out how to, find the guys that are willing to sort of lead it. I say party, but I'm sure the faction. I mean, there's different, terms for it, but, lead a group, to the table, right, to discuss. It's not all SPS. Maybe it's the Brazilians, maybe it's the Russians, whatever. Like, as long as they're common-minded and, that their representative actually represents them, then that's very helpful. So
yeah, it was like, it's basically just a community rep, right? We need different community reps for different areas. And like one prime one that speaks to me is like the little guy, the entry person, somebody that's really engaged with them, which I mean honestly might be Brave Tofu already, is because he's already super engaged with the onboarding process, but like somebody like him, he can be a voice of, those people, or whoever ends up being the community rep for whatever kind of groups that we want to get together. And yeah, so I guess like going back to the constitution side of things, that's one thing that I'm thinking is, it would be good to have some kind of clause that, the decisions that we make, we want to make sure that they do not harm new player onboarding. Definitely got to make sure that we're wary of any potential abuse, but, we don't want to take away stuff that makes it easier to enter the game. For me personally, like the rentals is a prime example. That's how I got in. That's how I definitely helped level up, was to get in and rent stuff. And I think it's a key proposition of some of the game, I guess. But yeah, I think clauses like that would be good. Yeah, I guess for me, the constitution is more like what's our kind of like North Stars, like we want to protect and support DEC and SPS. We want to protect the ecosystem. We want to make sure that we look after the validators. We want to try to keep it affordable or whatever. There's so many like various things we can add to this. Yeah. Is there anything else you want to talk about in terms of those voting groups and community reps and that kind of stuff?
Well, I would say, to wrap up my thoughts on that particular issue, I would say the other benefit that it would be is a lot of times I've noticed that the friction occurs when people misunderstand things, like they don't fully understand what it means, and they just make assumptions. And if you had I think you called it a whip, right? To where, that person is at the table, for instance, and was in the meeting and can say, oh, no, no, that's not how it went down. Here's what happened. Here's how it went. Here were the issues, right? And now that person's now communicating to his 100 people or her 100 people, right? So it not only helps with coming up with a better decision, it also helps with the information flow
Yeah.
back, to the people. So I'm a big proponent of it. Again, it's not something we're going to do by the end of the year, but from a goal standpoint, I think it would be a big deal.
Yeah. It's
And
something
you're, go ahead. I'm sorry.
like I say, it's something that we can be working towards, right? And we can always be kind of
Yeah.
working there.
Yeah. And again, we don't even have to have it plugged in. I mean, maybe we just, nominate, 10 people to represent, or maybe just even have a spot where people can register, like, hey, I'm the dude that that represents Australia or New Zealand or Germany, right? And then if you're German, then you want to sign up with the German dude because you think he's going to be more attuned to your mindset, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, and I guess also like talking about that pass on of information, that's one thing I'd like to see change a little bit for our proposals. Actually, so often it's like we're going to do this, this, and this, and off we go. But I feel there's room to have so much more background information in there, and I think that's often why we have that situation where people don't quite understand what's going on, is they don't necessarily have all the full pieces, or they don't quite get the context. And so I think there can be a lot of value in, hey, like, yes, we agree that this way is potentially better. Here are our concerns, and this is why we've actually ended up going a different way instead. But that's practice to get into having that as
Yeah, and I understand it, and I think there's a balance between,
mm-hmm.
you know, uh, like the process, the way it works now, in theory, right, is you put up a proposal, then there's a week to get feedback on it and
Mm-hmm.
change it or whatever. And then once you've done that, then if it meet that 66% threshold, then it goes to a real proposal, not a pre-proposal.
Mm-hmm.
And then everybody's got a chance to do it. Even something as simple as that is misunderstood.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
In other words, like people are like, oh no, you can't change it now. They've already voted in the pre-proposal stage, so you can't change it after
Yeah.
4 days, which is fine that they think that. It's just not the way it was intended,
Yes.
if that makes sense. So
Well, I
in
don't.
other words, even that doesn't make, like there's some people think it should be one way and other people think
Yeah.
it'd be another way, and then we'll fight about it forever. And that goes back to your point of, there is it would be good if we kind of had a process, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, and so I imagine, as we do kind of more of these pre-proposals or whatever, I imagine that's kind of where a lot more of the background can be. For me, I see like the pre-proposal and the proposal phase, that's the final technicalities. but hopefully we can draw a conversation and actually have talks about these proposals before they get to that phase. And that was
Yeah.
something that I think it was Webbles was commenting on is like, and like you were saying, right? Like, can we change it in pre-proposal? Like, yes, you can, but like, is that best practice? Is that good practice? Is it better to let it fail and do another one? Because not everybody can stay on top of and be super active and engaged and be like, oh, hey, yep, I know they've changed it. Now it's actually against what I want to do, or actually they've changed it for how I would like to see it. I'm going to go change my vote. Um, yeah, it's an awkward one, right? We're trying to figure out the flow of it. One,
You just gave me an idea. I mean, this is
yeah,
the first time I ever thought about it. So this could be breaking on your show if anybody likes it. But what if I was just talking about, if we had people that raised their hand and
mm-hmm,
said, hey, I represent a group of people, right? Or I
mm-hmm,
think the way I think, there would be people that think the way I think, right? And so I want to represent this group and then, let people, coalesce around them, right? Like, let's say somebody's, I don't know how you would do it, but I'll just speak in general terms. So let's say 20 people raised their hand and said, yes, Keegs raised his hand. Keegs wants to represent the freedom for small players,
mm-hmm.
society, whatever. Like you name it, whatever you want to name it. And then what you do is you say, I'm gonna put out, I'm gonna work on this behalf. Like you kind of go out and you state what you are, right? Like this is my principles, this is what I vote. Like you do a little like one pager type thing. And then what if that group of people could put up proposals, without the 100,000, deck, for instance, and not even a pre-proposal phase, just, you know, make the proposal like a pre-proposal, meaning, here it is, Keegs' group wants to have, I don't know, deck rentals, for free for all players under 1,000,
Yeah,
days or something like that, right? And whatever it happens to be, you could put it up and then it could be discussed and talked about, and you could then, you would have like X amount of people on your, team, so to speak, or support you. And then that would kind of give you some visibility, right?
mm-hmm,
To be able to then, like then approach Brave and approach Focus and approach all the different people with lots of votes and engage them with a little. See, the reason why people don't want to have like no SPS, or excuse me, no deck in the proposal system is they don't want to be inundated with a massive amount of stupid proposals, right? Like people
the
got
gatekeeper.
jobs, right? Yeah. So, but if there was this group of people, I
Mm-hmm,
think that they would be or they should be responsible enough, and maybe it would even require a vote of the community to allow that person to be
mm-hmm,
enabled to do that, right? And so you could have multiple, like you could have 20 whips, so to speak, that you call it, like that each represent different ones, right? And let the community vote on that.
yeah.
And so I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. I
Well,
think
that's similar to what I was thinking. Is like I'd like to see a page on the proposal page. We've got the proposal, we've got the pre-proposal, but I'd love to see one that's just draft. And yeah, however we kind of lock or manage that so that only approved stuff can go on there. I think that would go a long way because it's in the same place that proposals already can happen, and so no time limit on it, and maybe just the notification pings up if they update a new version, So I might go, hey, I'm working on the ongoing contract. Here's the draft. Everybody kind of gets that ping in the proposal thing, and it just sits there until either we do a new draft and that replaces it, or we go, okay, cool, we're happy with this draft, into pre-proposal phase it goes. Um, I don't know
I mean,
how.
yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I think that the people that are like, hey, we don't want to be inundated with it,
Mm,
honestly, I think there should be some way to keep that. In other words, if you just let everybody put up stuff, I mean, we had a guy today. He's like, he didn't even put any money in the game, and he's like demanding that we do all kinds of stuff, for him, like scrub his username and all of his all of his data, and it's
Yeah,
like you didn't even buy anything, and but he's like trying to waste people's time basically. So
yeah.
you got to be careful of that. But I mean, having said that, any serious way of doing something should definitely, I mean, I don't think anybody minds having a serious discussion about
Mhm.
anything that's important. And even if it's not important to somebody, like I'll give you an example of like soulbound versus non-soulbound, right? Like there was big proponents of obviously non-soulbound, right? And then there was other people that they want soulbound, right? And then we would fight about it, or bots versus no bots, human play versus bots. I mean, there were people that would fight to death if we brought this up in Tavern, for instance, right? So
But yeah,
I mean, there's just some issues that, people are going to be passionate on, but at the end of the day, as long as it's a serious proposal and not just, hey, I'm just going to try to force my way for the 400th time, right? In other words, those people should be the people I'm talking about that should be in those roles, should be trying to solve it in a way that's going to work, not
yes.
a way that gets their own personal like bias to go. Like, hey, okay, here's what your issue is with it. Okay, now I understand. Here's what I want to have happen. So is there a way to do it better? Right. And then talk it out. Right. It's
In that middle
just,
ground.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
I told you this show's going to go like 3 hours if you don't cut me off, Keegs.
Ah, that's right. Well, I've got the time anyway. So that's what at the moment, how does the proposal actually get onto the web page? Is it something that automatically happens if they pay the fee to the thing, or is it somebody has to manually go in and add that?
I believe Clay does it.
Yeah.
I think initially the team did it and then Clay took it over. I'm not 100% sure, but 99% sure that's what happens.
Yeah, okay. And so even we could just have that, right? We could have like one or two people that have approval to be able to put it on the website, and if you've got one, submit it to them. Maybe it does what we were talking about last time with Bejangles, where it's goes to the board. Is it the board, the DAO board? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. There's a DAO board. Yeah. I think that's another thing that's a pretty good idea too, is, I don't know if you want this in the Constitution, but you certainly could have it, in the process.
mhm.
But I think it's a great idea that it goes to the elected leaders of the DAO to make sure that it's not, I hate to use the
An
word
investment.
junk, but
Yeah.
crazy or time consuming or already been discussed 100 times and
Hmm.
went nowhere, whatever, like those guys have the interest of the community at heart, right? So they're not there to, I mean, they would like to, I'm sure, push everything through that they think is going to work, right? So they're not there to stop anything, but if they look at it and they're like, "Hey, yeah, that's a good idea," or that's reasonable that people want to talk about, I think that's a good process.
Yeah, and they're like usually a lot more tapped into what's going on as well, right? They're not just like, oh yeah, they're Splinterlands. Sometimes they're like, pretty involved, pretty keep up to date. So they're pretty representative of, well, they guess they've got a good idea of what's going on. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like one thing I'm going to try get a bit more information on is and do a series on is actually the board and how does that work. And yeah, I keep talking about these whiteboard videos. One day I'm going to get real good at it, and I just do a bunch of these whiteboard videos explaining, like here's the DAO, here's the board, here's the team, here's how it all works, here's the players. Um,
That would be awesome, by the way.
yeah,
Me
what's
and
just
you both. I need to do that as well for all the gameplay related stuff. Like people, like, oh, you didn't tell me, and sometimes they're right, right? Sometimes it was in my head, but I never properly articulated it to people. So,
yeah. Sometimes it's hard to get all the information out there.
well, and I mean, yeah, it is, but that's still the better you can do it, the better you're going to be, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah. Communication and education. When I was running my marketing company, one of the main things I used to tell our customers is actually you're in the business of education. You know, you want to educate people about your product or your service so they understand why it's good or why they need it, and then they will buy it. Not be like, here, buy it. It's like you need to educate them about it. Not everybody is clued into everything, and not everybody understands everything at the first glance as well.
Yep. Agreed.
Um,
Agreed.
all right, so I reckon now's a good time to jump into the main thing that I'm really keen to talk about, and that's the ongoing contract for set development. Um, so something we've kind of briefly talked about. I've talked about it briefly with Matt. I was listening back to that this morning, um, and yes, it had some behind closed doors talks about it as well. But I think, as we're maturing more and more, it seems that we are more and more capable to do it. Right? We've already had our first ongoing contract with Clay's contract. And I think, I guess, if we have an ongoing contract for set development, it gives the team a lot more certainty and clarity for, regular income coming in to pay out the DEC. I just think there's a range of benefits to it. And so I think, I guess, do you have any opening thoughts on it, or should we just?
Yeah, you didn't. You might want to explain it to people what you mean.
Yeah.
But my thoughts are, I think that's a great discussion. Yeah, and I'll go on it, but maybe let you explain your thoughts on it first,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll be happy to chime in.
Into it. Yeah, so I guess the idea is like we already get these proposals for each set, and so like a lot of the time they are similar. So instead of doing it regularly and it's just a process that we have to go through every single time, it's something that I think we can almost like standardize and go, okay, we want to expect, and I guess it's open to what we put in there, but it's like, okay, we're going to pay you X amount over whatever period, and that will include the development of the main set, the conflicts, the reward cards. Do we want a mini set? Do we want, include the voucher promos? Maybe skins can be in there. Yes, and I guess it's up to us and up to the company to figure out, how much and what do we want to try cover in this contract. I guess that's the nuts and the bare basic of it. So let's.
Yeah, I think, number one, I love the idea, because I think it's important that, the DAO is its own entity, right? And the DAOs should be getting the things that they want, from the team. And then in addition to that, the team, is producing what they think people want. So it'd be much better if they, actually just were told, hey, yeah, we would like to have this. Now, having said that, there has to be some degree of freedom to create new things, like, for instance, land cards. If you like them or you don't like them, like, that's not the point. The point is, like, they didn't exist. So if we had a contract at the beginning of 2025, that wouldn't have been on the, you wouldn't have paid us for them because nobody even knew they existed, right? So,
Yeah.
there's got to be a little flexibility for us to do certain things in addition, to whatever we're getting paid for. But the things that people know that they want, like, we know we want a main set. We know we want reward cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
We know we're going to want voucher cards, for instance. Like that was in the last proposal that, we make, I think it was 10 of those. So those are the kind of things that, like, are pretty common and standard. And then it becomes, well, how do we do it, right? And it could be a fixed number of deck. It could be a split, with the company. The way that, I'll put it this way. I work for the company and I got a lot of SPS, so I feel like I'm an owner in the DAO too, right? So I have to put my company hat on one moment and then my DAO hat on the other moment. And between the two, I think there's should be enough money there to make a lot of great stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the struggle between, in the past, the company kind of they did it like in the beginning, of course, there was no DAO, right? And then it was like all the money flowed to the company. So if they
Mhm.
did a good job and managed their business, then they did all right. And if they didn't, then it would be, then they would struggle, right? And then the Dow came along and they said, all right, well, we want to make sure the Dow makes money on stuff, right? So they gave some pretty dang good deals to to the Dow, like, and when I say a good deal, I mean any human would take the deals that they were offering. Like fund this, 200,000 or $200,000 worth of deck and get half of the whole next set, right? And then we knew they would be fully funded by the end of the pre-sale, right? And then anything after that is just extra. So even though it was it's definitely beneficial for the Dow, the team didn't run at a profit as a result, right? Like, in other words, the money that was profit to the Dow was not going to the team, which then made it harder for the team to survive. So I think a better way of going about it, in my opinion, is exactly what you just said, is, like having people on the Dow, like, like how much do you guys need to provide a certain number of things, over a period of time. And it doesn't have to be a year. It could be 18 months for a whole cycle because we kind of have an 18-month cycle at this point. Um, it could be compressed, right, into a 14-month cycle. Like, again, the Dow's like, nah, we want a main set, a mini set, reward cards, voucher cards. We want this many, and we want it over the course of 15 months, right? Like we could do that, right? And of course we would have to negotiate on like, well, what is that going to? Oh, and the other thing is, cover the cost. We would need money to cover the game actually running too. That's the part
Yeah,
like a lot of people don't realize. Like somebody's got to pay to keep those servers running and all that kind of stuff. So, but I mean, it could all be built in a way that makes sense, right? It could be highly fixed, right? Or highly variable. And by that, I mean, it could be like, you just pay us and then get all the money to the Dow, or you could pay and do a 50-50 or a 75-25 on any direction. So like I would be flexible. I'm sure Matt would be, because again, I think the team has kind of taken the approach that we want to make sure that the Dow was well funded. So it's pretty easy. Like we're coming from a good spot, right? Like the company was a little too generous, I guess would be what I would say.
yeah. Well, it's just trying to find that balance, right? So, yeah, I guess. So I don't necessarily see this as like being the one and only contract, right? This would be like the main contract for all the core. Our
Yeah.
bread and butter, right? Our bread and butter is the sets that we release every frequency. Um,
Yep.
and yeah, that's kind of how you guys do it at the moment, right? Is we pay you up front for the kind of set development, and then we split the funds, and that gives you guys flexibility to go. Okay, actually, with some of these funds, we want to develop frontier mode, or we want to work on these other things. And it might be
Right.
also as well that like we've got this ongoing contract, and then goes, hey guys, we've got this amazing up or land that we want to do, and this will be a one-off contract. We want to do a year's worth of work. This is what it is. Here's a separate contract. Um, and yeah, I do like the idea of like the revenue share. I think it's quite a good way to do it. It means that the company can succeed as well. It means that we're kind of both vested in the success of a set. We have a fixed payment. Okay, hey, we've delivered it. Cool. We don't care how well it does. Whereas much more actually set up where you've got incentives, right? It's like why sales reps have got commissions. It's a similar kind of mindset as, we want it to do well. And then, especially if the company's on a revenue share, then of course they want to do it to do well as well, right? Um, yeah,
Yeah, I agree. I
yeah.
mean, everything you just said, I agree. And I definitely think there's a way we can do that. So if the community wants to go down that route,
Mm-hmm.
uh, we would certainly be very open to it and, do our best to try to achieve whatever the Dow wants. Like I said, I think the company has been very, I don't know the word generous, but they've been very shy, maybe
Mm-hmm.
to, bring a lot, to the community. But honestly, I think being more open and direct and, hey, here's what we want. Here's what we think is fair. And, and then let the team like I wouldn't say negotiate, but look at it and see if it's acceptable. And if it's acceptable, then why not? I mean, honestly, if, me running the business, there's a lot of variables, running the business, right? It's not just sales, right? Sales is one thing, right? But then, how are the markets going to do? How many players are we going to have? What's the demand going to be, right? Blah, blah, blah. Like there's a whole bunch of variables in place. So that is one of them, right? Is trying to estimate, you know, how
Mhm.
much sales we're going to do. So if the Dow came up and said, "Hey, here's how much you guys need to develop to do these," we tell you, and you know, and you guys are like, "Cool, let's do it," right? Like that would be better for us too.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I think that's kind of how we do it. Is like we kind of, as part of this process, we try to find that, I guess, middle ground where this is enough regularly, this is how much the split is, um, and so I don't necessarily see it like the DAO goes away and we go, okay, this is what we think it is, and then come to you guys. We have such a close relationship, the DAO and the company, right? They're kind of two arms of the same beast, and so it's just like, yeah, let's try to work together on it.
Yeah, I mean, to be clear, we're definitely two separate group entities,
Mhm.
right? But we definitely are intertwined in the sense that success of one helps the success of the other, or failure of one is the failure of the other, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, what would the Dow have if Splinterlands just said, "All right, we're done, we're out"? Like the Dow wouldn't be in great shape, right? And
no,
vice versa, right? And where would the team be if the Dow just said, "Oh, we just threw all our money on a bet on some obscure token and we just lost it all," right? So it's beneficial that both are strong together, right? So I
symbiotic.
think that's pretty well understood by most people. Yeah, at least most of the serious people.
Yeah, yeah. There definitely could be more education on that, and that will slowly happen over time. But yeah, I think there's a lot of good understanding about it. And yeah, so I guess for me is, so we've got like the main kind of set stuff. Probably the other stuff that we'll include is, like maybe like regular, just keep the maintenance going, keep the servers on. Maybe some regular rule sets. That would be kind of our base. We're going to give you this. This is kind of what we expect in return. Um, do you think there's things that fringe things that could maybe be included, or maybe things that you don't want included? Um, yeah, I
I
guess.
mean, I'll put it this way: I'm open to pretty much everything, like almost everything. So, I think the only thing that where there would be some degree of pushback would be when it comes to priority of development. So, for instance, if let's say to build that system we were talking about, that governance system, like let's say that was something that you were like, all right, this is really cool. Let's go ask the company if they'll put it in place. And let's say it costs, I don't know, 10 grand, right? Like even if I wanted to, like right now, I have so many things, like lined up that I would have to say no, in this unit of time. Having said that, I could certainly say yes to a 6 month time frame. So it'd be more like things like that, right? So if
Mhm.
obviously if it's a main set, like I would say you, me, and pretty much most people in the community that have been here a while, we understand there's a main set, reward set for sure, right? And then the conflicts, for the main set, and then there's the voucher cards, right? And then many times there's been a mini set, and sometimes there hasn't been a mini set. But I mean that would be pretty normal that would be included. And then if there was other things that you guys wanted, like let's say skins, we
Mhm.
want like three alter. We want a SPS version of the skins,
Mhm.
right? Like every card we want an SPS, skin for to highlight, how cool owning SPS is, right? Like, yeah, sure, you could throw that in. And then we could come back and say, yeah, that's reasonable, or nah,
Mhm.
that's probably going to be too much work. I mean, in the case of skins, it wouldn't be unreasonable, but I mean, it may be something else that,
Mhm.
is harder to do. So having
Okay.
said that, my point is throw it in there, right? If you think it's good, then we should know that you guys think it's good.
Yeah. I guess with the skins, like at the moment, is it already kind of part of the development process to have at least a couple of alternate arts? Like I think that.
Uh, it was and hasn't been, recently.
Mhm.
So they're having to redo the skins in a, like each time they do a skin, it's almost like making a new card without having to do the stats part of it, right?
Yeah.
So, but the art from the art standpoint,
Mhm.
it's the whole process there. I mean, fortunately, that's work, and that's something that, like, for instance, we've had to hire. We have a studio we work with outside. So we have an internal artist and we have outside artists. So it's, we had to contract outside artists to get, these things done. So for instance, for Halloween and Thanksgiving
Mhm.
and Christmas, those skins, we've had outside people work with us to,
Mhm.
catch us up. Um, but no, it's not automatic, is my point. So,
Yeah.
so that would be a perfect example. Like, you guys wouldn't know that process. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't say that it would be a no, right?
Mhm.
I would say it's yes, but you guys would need to understand that, this is gonna, like, if you wanted like alternative art, let's say you wanted a Spider-Man theme for all of our cards, right? And then we go tell them,
Uh,
you know, hey, go make us put the Spider-Man theme in the whole set, the whole Conclave set, make a Spider-Man theme,
mhm.
group. I mean, we could do that, right? But
Kind of
there
money.
would be some cost, right?
Yeah.
So we would have to just tell you like what that would be. And it probably isn't going to be prohibitive. So if you really did want that, it'd probably be a yes, but it will require discussion.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess so. For a lot of those are like a lot more like the seasonal skins, and so that I understand that's a lot more like yeah, specific development for that. But I'm almost imagining like as part of the regular set development, maybe part of the requirement is that the team does at least one alt art skin. It doesn't have to be themed or anything. It's just a different variant that the DAO can have in its bank that we can either release as tournament pricing or whatever. I think it's just
Oh
it's
yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
maybe we have and part of that. So we've got a duplicate of every card, and then we want 20 seasonal skins per set or whatever, and that's included. And if we want more, then we can ask, or you guys could be nice to just do it. But
Yeah.
I can imagine, yeah, like the regular skins and then the seasonal stuff, because the regular stuff, right? You'll be doing kind of different versions of variants anyway as part of the drafting process. It's just a matter of taking one of those a
Yeah.
little bit.
Well, and like you said, if we knew it up front, like that was part of the deal, yeah, it would be more efficient for us too, because then it would be like, hey, we're making, like, right now we're making the mini set cards, right? So, I don't want to, take it too far off track, but in the case of that, like, we have the play testers, right? The card designers hand it over to the play testers test it, change it, move things around, right? And then they get what they call a banger, or they want it to be a banger. And when they're done with that, then the art team has to then go make artwork to fit those cards. The art guys come in at the very end, right? They're not there in the beginning because it's, you didn't even know what the card's going to be, what abilities, how big, blah blah blah. So right now, the process is like, okay, like Nate's in the process now where he knows a good chunk of those. So for the mini set, like by the end of this month, he should be well aware of most of the cards, and most of them have art. Having said that, in early December we'll have um, like a finalization of the stats, and then he'll have to do some changes. But having said that, no, at this point, he's only doing one variation of it. But if it was in the contract, that you guys paid us a little more to make sure there was a alt skin for it, yeah, it would be part of the whole process. So we would tell the artist, hey, don't just make one of this guy, make the other one, and then have whatever theme you guys want it to be. And it can be literally any theme you guys want for the
And
alt art.
it has to be themed. I just think sometimes just having a slightly different looking one, like almost kind of what the beta skins were, right? They're not like necessarily themed; they're just slightly different versions of the character that yeah, we can give out in unique places.
Yeah.
One that
I
could
mean,
be good for I was just thinking from the limited skins is so when I was helping with some of the CA testing, is we had those just like kind of sketch cards. I almost think
yeah.
it would be a very cool some other games, they give out like basically the artist proofs. We could do a similar kind of thing with some of those, is like, those temporary art assets that we create. That's I feel quite a low lift in terms of the art commitment. That could be quite a small, limited thing that could be given out in all sorts of places, really.
Yeah, I mean, we have black and white, sketches of everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That could be really, they could be one-offs or, like very limited print run, but like artist proof stuff would be, I know in other games it's pretty popular.
Yeah, you're talking, I mean, that's exactly the kind of stuff I love. So, yeah.
Yeah, nice.
I'm all for it.
All right, so I guess we've kind of covered the main, like, okay, what cards, what are the assets do we kind of ask for? Time frame is another interesting one. Like you said, we're kind of mostly on an 18-month cycle. I think we could, it's a hard one to balance, right? Because if we make it more frequent and the kind of pricing doesn't change, it might be an issue for some people. Personally, I think I would love to see it down to a 12-month contract. Maybe month 1 or month 0, it's the main set. Month 3, half the reward set. Month 6, mini set. Month 9, reward set. Back to the next one. And that's just like a nice regular flow. Kind of flows nicely with how, with the reward cards, with the year-long set release for that. And because I think one of the biggest issues that our ecosystem struggles with is we have a few periods of the year where there's so much demand. And that's DC rushes up to peg and all that, and then it just slowly drops off again. And so I think trying to have them more regularly might help with that. But yeah, how do we get there? What does the community want? And I guess, what does the community want, but also like what's best for the community as well. One idea I briefly thought of was kind of, instead of having a main and a mini set, maybe just have it as 2 sets. But like, so, I think Conclave Arcana, the main set's like 100 odd cards, the mini set's 40. So maybe we do 2 75 card sets instead. So it's less all at once, kind of spreads it out a little bit more. But yeah, that's one I'm very keen to get people's thought process on. For me as well, the year works really well with some of the tournament stuff that I was thinking. And because, like most of your guys' stuff is based on like monthly or yearly, right? It's not 18 monthly. So having a steady consistency. And, we could go, okay, we want, maybe March and August or October or whatever is when we want sets. It might be a nice kind of time in between the holidays or whatever. Because, potentially we have so much of that control at our hands, right? Is if we set this up right. But yeah, who knows?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there's going to be a couple of people that are going to want to overly do it, right? Though, we want exactly, 17 cards with 8 of them rares and, blah, blah, blah. Like, they'll want to overdo it. And I think there might be some pushback there, if the attempt is made. And when I say pushback, not necessarily from the team, because it's actually not that hard for us, if you guys could agree. But I think the hard part is getting, a massive group of people to agree, to anything super micromanaged, right? I think you kind of got to stay, big picture, like, but for instance, great idea about alt skins, like every card in, the set you guys are paying for should have an alt skin as part of the, process, right? Like that would be an easy thing. If you get down and say, nope, the rares should have, this kind of skin. The epics should have this kind of skin. And, that's when people like start to fight and bicker over stuff like that. So try to keep it as high level as possible.
Yeah. So it's like, we've got to find that balance. How broad do we want it, but how, and like what bits do we want to go to detail? What points do we want to give you guys the flexibility? Yeah. And I guess as well, like one thing that's kind of come up for me as well is if we do kind of agree a time frame and it blows out for whatever reason, if we're paying you on a monthly basis, what happens? I think maybe some of those small contingencies, I guess, would be good to cover instead of being like, oh, shit has happened and now what? There's some things that like have a chance of occurring that's, to me anyway, seems blaringly obvious. It's So let's try kind of cover those off. Um, but yeah, that's, again, like minor detail to add into. I think the main thing that we want to try to agree on is like the big, broad top strokes. And then, yeah, figure out, if we have some of those minor details. And that's the thing as well.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, just big picture, like you just said, like honestly, uh, I mean, we do that, right? When we put out our proposal for the mini set, I mean, that's doing that, right? But it came from us, right? So, and I can tell you sometimes, it's a good idea to talk to us because we're probably uniquely positioned to try to, help, like bring people together, so to speak,
mm-hmm.
right? Like I said, like just something like that. Like SPS, the packs are being sold by SPS. One of the purposes behind doing that was to get the DAO the SPS, right? So there's some people that are like, nope, that ain't gonna work. That's horrible. That's terrible, right? And if it's just DAO only, like without us being involved at all, right, in it, I'm pretty sure it would be a very frustrating process because it's frustrating for us, and we at least have people paying attention, right? Like, meaning, at least they know that we're there to make sure that, at least in our interest, that the interest of the whole game going forward, right? Where some of these people are like, this is going to kill everything, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
having said that, I mean, like you guys can leave like a lot of times in those proposals, they leave it up to the team, right? Like, here's what we'd like to see,
Mm-hmm.
and for instance, if you can do a conflict, do a conflict. So like the mini set, we're planning on, we're hopefully going to be doing a conflict. We're trying to right now, figure out, what are the what did we learn from the last conflict, right? With the
Mm-hmm.
black foils and the regular foils and all that stuff. And how can we take that knowledge and improve upon it on the next one? That's best left to us, in my opinion,
Yeah.
to get a vote, right? Having said that, I mean, I don't mind input. That's how I would solve the problem is talk to people like you
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it, Paul TRX and Jangles and Vunctus and Brave and you know what I mean? Like I try to talk to as many people as possible that represent different things, but my goal is to make something that works, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you guys do that, that's great. But my point is just be careful.
Yeah.
It is a frustrating process. Like I was talking to Weagle, on his process, his last thing, and I didn't have any issue with, what he had other than the reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. In other words, he had a pretty simple, straightforward thing on his concept. Like these tournaments are just like participation prizes and kind of like a weird airdrop, right?
Mm-hmm.
So can we at least make them competitive? And then he came up with a solution. I
Mm-hmm.
personally didn't have any problem with the solution, and I got gold foils and all that. But there are people that have gold foils and they did not like that, right? They were like, "Oh, this is horrible. This is like going to devalue the gold foils." So I did my best to try to get them to work together, like the guys that were on that fence to work with him and try to find a solution. And those are the kind of things that, are tough, right? So I guess my point is the more granular you get, the more of those kind of discussions are going to take. There's only so many people that want to get involved in that. That's all.
Yeah. 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 I agree for sure. So it's just trying to find that balance. Maybe we may, what I was thinking is we could have like a broad, proposal, give you guys lots of scope, but then we could maybe give guidance, it's like, hey, like this is kind of roughly how we'd like to see it. If you guys can align it, great. If not, we're not going to cancel the contract on you or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually worked out really well. And yeah, we try to honor that. Like even like the conflicts. Like I had different meetings with different people. Like I'm talking to you right now and your audience, and it might be with Jangles, or I have different groups of people that I meet with, on a regular basis, like weekly, for instance. And my goal is to always try to understand how people think, right?
Mhm.
Like, because, if you don't know that, it's like listening to your customer. So, I think it's important, to understand, right? And so I'm all for this process. Like I think obviously if you guys can get something that passes without tearing apart the community, then that's great. Like I have a full faith in the collective group to make good decisions. I would say just be careful with the process that we go slow. We put like one toe in the water before we jump in the deep end, right? Like there will be some learning, things that need to be done. Certain people have certain way of looking at things, and even if they all care about the game, they all have different things they care about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there's just so many ways to play the game as well, right? We have people that are just land, we have just foundation, we have modern only. This, yes, and like so many different groups, and it's
Yeah,
pretty impossible to ever keep all the groups happy.
yeah,
Anybody can.
and they feel like they have to fight for attention. It's like like having a bunch of kids. Like we have like 8 kids, right? And
Mhm.
and if you have 8 kids, then the one that like makes the most noise is the one that like gets the best dinner. That kind of thing. So that's really not how it is, but that's how some people think it is, right? And uh, you know, at the end of the day, it's not that they don't care. Like for instance, I had one guy, one of the posts. I'm not going to name him, call him out on your show, but on one of the posts recently, he was like, "Yeah, this whole land thing is taking away interest from the game. Like everybody's so excited about land, they're not playing the regular thing." And I understand, like people are excited for land, right? Like they are the land, changes are new and exciting, and people are excited. But I mean, I pointed out like it isn't like like his thought in his mind was, oh, that means because we did this for land and now people are excited about land, then that means we're not focused on
Yeah.
ranked play, but we are focused on ranked play. We just put a whole new reward system in for ranked play, right? To get people to be interested and pumped up about it and want to play. And we just did another thing on top of that. But the point is, it's like different times, different people think different ways. And yes, the point I made to him was we are all integrated, right? This is all one huge economy, right? And at the end of the day, I don't look at like land people as better than, modern people, that's better than wild people or better than tournament players. Like it's all of it has to be good, right? All of it, right? Now, maybe there's certain priorities of things that need to be delivered first. So, for instance, the free to play came out, before we did the reward system, but that's because we needed a spot for people to land, right? That was easier, that was gave them something without breaking the game. So things like that is just a matter of priorities. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah. Well, and like not everything that you bring out is always going to be for a particular group, right? Like you said, at the moment, lands at the moment the thing that's happening. But a month ago, it was all the new reward cards, and there was all sorts of excitement there. Not every proposal or every change is going to have a little something for everybody, and you've just got to be okay with that. And it usually balances out. And especially some areas. I feel you guys are getting good at making sure that most areas are pretty broadly, looked after, not forgotten about for years and years.
Cool. I'm glad you think that, Keegs. I mean, that's good. And yeah, that is true. Like honestly, every aspect of the game I want to be better, right?
Yeah.
Like there's not nothing that I would say is exactly where I want it. So it's just a process. So um, one thing we are got coming up, which like you said, like land is the focus right now. It is, but in a couple of weeks, people are going to be saying, "Oh, all you guys care about the gamers," right? So in other words, we're put out so many things and have so many things in the pipeline. Like the pace you can't judge it by the latest thing out because the latest thing out, yeah, hopefully is really cool. I mean, if we do our job right, everything we do should be really cool, right? So, and when something becomes cool right after that, doesn't mean the other thing wasn't cool. It just means we just keep going. I actually take it as a compliment that somebody said the other day in Tavern, there was like a debate about are we putting stuff out too fast, right? Like people are, can't keep up. And I was like, I take that as a compliment because, the opposite is what everybody used to complain about, right? Like, oh God, they take forever. They overpromise. They say this, then and it takes forever. And now they just keep pumping out stuff and I can't pay attention or I can't catch up. I mean, that's a good thing. Honestly, that means that we're starting to fire, smoothly. So
Well,
I'm
and for a
happy.
long time, we had phases of where there would be a lot of releases and then there'd be nothing, and then a lot of releases. And I think you guys are actually getting quite good at staggering them out so that, there's like, okay, there's a release, little reprieve, another thing. And yeah, like it is a lot. And I'm not trying to keep up. I gave up trying to keep up. I've picked where my lanes. I think that's potentially just some of what people have to do is right. Is pick your lane. So many people
Yep.
want to be able to 100% complete every element of the game. It's like that's like sure, great if you want to do that, but like good luck. Even
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah,
full.
you just can't. I mean, that's great that people want to do that, and it's actually a sign of, you know, uh, the quality of people that we have in that, they want to be the best, right? Like I
Mhm,
want to be the best, right? Like I want to be the best player, I want to be the biggest player, whatever, right? Like whatever they view as success, they want to do it, right? And that's a driving factor. So I don't want to in any way, shape, or form tell them don't do that. Like that's
mhm,
great. But at the same token, hopefully they respect the fact that we continue to make things so that
mhm.
everybody can't achieve it, right? Like, in other words, not because we don't want enough people, but because we make so many things, it's just not possible, right? Like, you can't do everything all at once. You got to pick, like you said, you got to, like some guys pick land and they're doing land. Other guys are picking gameplay, and they're like killing it. I see some of the SPS winnings, for some of the guys, and it's like amazingly high compared to what it used to be, right? So, you know,
Modern.
say that again.
It makes me want to play modern. That's for sure. Seeing some of those SP openings.
Yeah, and the same thing with the like the foils, right? Like, sure, I want to own every single black foil arcane. I really do,
Yeah.
right? But it's just I don't have the money to be able to do that. But does that mean I don't want any? Does that
Mhm.
mean that, I'm unhappy that they're there? Hell no. I mean, I'm happy if I get a couple of them. So
I pulled my
anyway,
first draws, which was
you
quite
did
good.
what?
The weekly draws. I've pulled
Oh
my
yeah, yeah. I
yeah
saw it.
yeah
Yeah, you guys did good. I think Jangles got one and Fat Jimmy got one too. This was
yeah
the y'all's crew. All three of you guys, popped one there. That was awesome to see.
yeah. Woke up to messages about that this morning. It's like oh fuck, I better get in and check.
I like the fact that people are checking. Like I
Mm,
actually wake up, on Friday mornings, and you know, I'm excited to see like all
mm,
the banter about it. Like people are showing how many draws they have, and are we going to win? And oh no, I'm going to be unlucky this time, and blah blah blah. But it's just nice to have people like looking forward to something on one particular day of the week. Like I just think it's a cool dynamic.
yeah. Well, like you said, right. I get so many people engaged. So many of the different Discord channels that I'm part of. There's people posting, and soon we'll have the luckiest long shot in there as well. Yeah, I think
Yeah, what do you think about that, by the way?
oh yeah, it's great. I mean, like I remember talking about having the basic bucket or something where maybe if you don't win, you could get chances at merits or potions or whatever. But actually, this card is going to be pretty cool. And like, I guess one of the things I'm most excited about is now that we just have this mechanic in place, right? So now we can do this for other things. I think
Yep.
one thing that a lot of people haven't quite realized is actually how much infrastructure that you guys have put in place over this last year. That sure, it's taken a while to put it in place, but now to be able to put out more of this stuff, it's just going to start flying out the door. Yeah.
Yep. I'm glad you recognize that, and hopefully you educate people a little bit on that because you're 100% correct. I don't think people understand these are all tools.
Mhm.
Everything we built, right? Like things like that mechanic for the draws, right? And we put in place like that can be repeated, right? We can repeat it in different modes. We could put in tourneys. We could, there's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do. The luckiest long shot card, if that's successful, if people like it, we already know how to do it. What's the only variable going to be? The only variable is going to be a different card. That's
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
right? We've already built the infrastructure to be able to, how does it work? How do we derive it? What's the rules? And the other thing is we can also, if we don't get it right, like if we're off in terms of, like, for instance, the black foils versus the regular foils, okay, so, we have to live through, that set, but that doesn't mean that we have to do it the exact same way the next time. We can adjust and adapt, but the basic framework is still there. The conflict system is still great.
Yeah.
It's just one component was off, right? That's all. So, but people get into it like, they kind of like ascribe intentions, right? Like there was never an intention to make everybody that was a regular foil player be unhappy, right? That wasn't the intention. It just was the outcome of the way the rules are put together. And whenever you do something for the first time, you're always going to have a little bit of that, right? Because you're shooting in the dark. But now
Yeah.
we're going to have a much, like, we'll adjust, and the conflicts for the mini set will probably have a variation that is going to make more people happy. And hopefully the people start thinking longer term and seeing how this is going to work over the long haul. Like I said, you understand, once we do it once, it's now something developed and it's very easy to copy the code for the next one or to amend little pieces or to change a picture out or something like that. That's not hard at all.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest qualms that people had with the conflicts was more just the announcement came out after the the set came out, essentially. I don't really want to go into too much because it's been discussed a lot. But yeah, just some people made plans thinking that, surely the team sees this is going to be an issue. They're going to adjust it, so I'm going to make my plan. Or some people go, oh, this is cooked. I'm going after the black foils. So that'd be my main request, to just make sure that how the complex is going to work, or the requirement is kind of mostly out before the set drops.
Yeah, I agree. We
Yeah.
will definitely do our best, especially on something that we know is controversial. We'll do
Mm.
our best to try to, like, overeducate people,
Yeah.
like be redundant and, like I spend a lot of time talking. So, probably say too much, like just keep repeating myself. So, but in a case of something like that, it's probably needed just to make sure it's pounded into, like people understand.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the curse of knowledge as well, right? People that are so involved with it, they think it's like second nature. Everybody knows this, but actually not everybody picks it up. But yeah, I really hope, I think the conflict system is such an upgrade compared to the airdrops, right? Like it's achieving so many of the things. And like the rebellion conflict, for example, was such a good introduction to it. It's a little shame that it's had this bad taste, but I don't think it's going to take you guys much to get it back in line with what people think is, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other thing I
Go
had
ahead.
is it does suck that repair costs the same as a whole new wagon. Personally, I'd love to see like a repair kit a little bit less, but that's fine.
I will acknowledge that point. I have a list of things that I think people want to have addressed, and that's one of them. So, you know,
Yeah.
in other words, whenever I'm trying to put together something like that, obviously we have to make the set first, which includes the playable cards and the art and all that. When we get down to mechanics, like we already have the general framework of how conflicts work. Now those are like details. So in those details, yes, I'm very aware that people feel it's a tax, that they don't want to pay, number one. And number two, that the feel good, feel bad, ratio between regular foil and black foil there's too great of a variance. So I hear both those points. I think I've had a lot of conversations with people. I believe we'll come up with a good solution similar to what we did on the reward cards. Like if you look at the way the reward cards, we used to have fights about everything should be soulbound, and other people are like, oh, that's just horrible. We need to be able to get free trading cards. And then the soulbound people are like, well, then they'll just flood the market and devalue them and blah, blah, blah. And we came out with a solution that was, down the middle, right? It addressed the issues of one group and the other group and came to a pretty good compromise. So hopefully we can do something like that on conflicts too. And I just
Yeah.
look at that as details. So I've already got some pretty good ideas in my mind. But
Yeah.
I don't want to say what they are yet because I'm still trying to flesh them out.
Yeah, I mean that's where you just got my brain buzzing about what it could be. Yeah, and I think that's the thing as well. I think that the wagons have got a place. I think the biggest issue, and it's usually the way is like it's not just one issue. There's a compounding issues. So yes, we've got the new tax, but also the fact that the majority just went to a few players, and then so they're just dumping them, which is a shame. Those big accounts, if they, it's all within their power. They could have just held on to them, and I think those airdrops cards would have seen a much better price point. It's going to be really interesting to see the Loving the Moo one. Hopefully, a few whales are listening. Don't just dump them. Hold on to them for a bit longer. But yeah, like I hope that the Archons have a better run, or especially because there's going to be a lot less of them now as well, right? With the increase in how much you need.
Yeah, part of that was that's the other thing in that, was the formula, right? Like I definitely want to do a better job of explaining it. Like people get upset like we manipulated it negatively for them, right?
Mhm.
But in reality, it's just math, right? Like we set it at whatever. I mean, the goal is, and this is what people don't understand. It's not to give X amount to any group, right? At
Mhm.
all. It's literally to say how many legends are in the system, right?
Mhm.
And can we make the number so that we get the same number essentially, give or
Mhm.
take a few, that's what we had. When we first do it
Mhm.
this year, it was too high. And as a result, we overprinted them by like 30%, right? And whenever you overprint some 30%, it has no. So in any event, so that's one of the reasons why those cards, you know, I agree. A lot of people bought the black foils to get those cards, right?
Mhm.
And so therefore they were sort of gamifying the system, right? Because of the disparity,
Mhm.
right? Which creates a bad feel for the guys that obviously not getting that share. And then of course, like you said, they want, obviously as part of their equation, they want to sell them onto the market, right? Because they never bought them to play them. They just bought them as
Mhm.
a speculation, right? And then the second aspect of that is the shit. I just lost my train of thought.
Wagons. Uh, well, to jump in, I guess with
Yeah,
the oh, no, you made me lose mine as well. What was
yeah.
I?
See,
No, it's the guarantees. It's the guarantees that like really factor into it, right? Like it's a lot easier to set it if maybe the guarantees are really high, but say we started with the guarantees at 1,600, but then it's more based on actually how much is participating. It might have been guaranteed, only five, but if we overshoot the guarantee, then that means actually people are going to get a lot more, maybe just not the guaranteed. And so I think the guarantee is really what has the sticking point, right? Um,
yeah, but
and
the
yeah,
guarantee is what hits the number. And the second point I was going to say to that, which was I think I'd already made, so I was kind of repeating myself, but not only do the guys that like went and got like all black foils because that's how it was designed, like they didn't do anything wrong, that's how we designed it,
yeah,
right? And
yep,
they did that, right? And then of course part of that equation is they sell, so that puts selling pressure. Then the other part of it is we overproduce them by 30% because
yeah,
because everybody was like, well, A, we set it, too high in the first place, but B, we got a lot of grief when we tried to raise it, right? Because people are like, oh, you're already giving me crappy stuff. Keep it that way. And then you can see the outcome right there. I mean, the first three cards, one of them is trading like at a loss, like $3.80. So you'd be
mm,
negative by doing it. So part of the lesson there is that it's very important to keep the quantity, in circulation to be equivalent to the quantity of the
mm,
game because that's what people are playing with, right? Once you create 30% more that people don't need, you're going to always have selling pressure.
yeah, yeah. I'd much rather see like a much higher like bar for guarantee, and then then you've just got the variance in how lucky you are. But yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys bring out for this next one. Yeah, like you said, like what you
Yeah,
already like whirling.
yeah. I don't want to say now because it's still in the
Yeah,
thought process. So, but I am pretty excited about the solution. I really haven't been worried about a solution because there has been a lot of great feedback. And by the
mm,
way, when I talk about feedback being great, it doesn't mean always just agreeing, with what I say. It means like honest, constructive feedback. Like if people give honest, constructive feedback, I love it, right? Because that helps. So I don't have to always agree. Like me and you had a disagreement on one thing not that long ago, right? So, but I appreciated that you did it. I saw the time that you took to, map out your thought, right? And so we came to different conclusion, right? And in some cases, it's going to be like neither of us know. Like we're
Mm,
just going to have to find out together. So positive feedback, in my opinion, or good feedback or great feedback is not necessarily positive. It could also be negative. It just has to be constructive, right? Like
yes.
meant to help. And I think like the people that do that, I think they don't understand how valuable that actually is. So
Mm,
uh,
mhm.
at least I
Maybe we
recognize.
maybe we should start, like going or posting out some good examples, like, hey, here's some feedback that we've received. It's good because of this bit and this bit. And try, it's like, how can we encourage the behavior? Show good examples of it. So maybe we have to do a feedback review session at some stage and just go,
Yeah,
this is good feedback, this is bad feedback.
yeah, I agree. I mean, the bad feedback is hard. I mean, we all know that I think intuitively kind of understand the bad feedback, when the guys just come in and they just, this sucks, this is terrible, this is why I'm down 98%, why are we giving, this group something? Another guy like today goes in today in tavern early this morning. He's like, these are worthless. Uh, lucky long shot cards are worthless. They didn't even know what they were. He just started calling them worthless. That has no idea. He didn't even know how he got them. He just said, this is horrible, and why are we wasting our time for a common, one
Mm-hmm.
BCX? Like he didn't even take the time to even understand before he started being negative on it. So,
Yeah,
like, yeah, that's bad feedback,
yeah.
basically.
And so many people are quick to jump on, like, saying, oh, it's bad, but they actually haven't dug deep enough to have an informed decision. Like, I've had a
Right.
couple conversations on Discord recently where it's like, oh, hang on, like, why? Or, digging a bit deeper and just like, oh, so actually, you just actually don't realize how this works. And actually, now that you do, it's like, oh, actually, it's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I love it when guys flip. Like, I don't even like to see people that are unhappy. Like, like I think there's some people that like they get mad and like, say basically F that guy, right? Like, like that's never me, right? Like I always like feel bad that somebody feels bad, right? Like even if they're a jerk, even if they are negative, I mean, I tend to be a positive person just in general. I don't like to see people in misery. And that's how I view it, right? Like somebody that comes in and just starts railing on something right off the bat, he's got a different issue, right? Like it's not a one, BCX of a brand new card. He's got a different issue. So, like in that case, I think he was just upset. He's down 99%. And if he's down 99%, which he probably isn't even down 99, but he's probably down a lot, right? So, quibble him whether it's 99 or 90. The point is he's probably down serious money and he's unhappy. So I feel bad for him for being unhappy, right? Like I don't like relish in the fact that, the community like wants to burn the guy either, so I just wish I love I don't I think you were in one of those conversations today where you actually explained it to them and then they flipped, right? Like they flipped from, oh, I didn't know that, right? And like I actually like that. I wish we had more in the community that do that. We did used to be that way in the old days. Uh, but part of the problem is, time, right? Like I've been here 7 years, right? There's a lot of people that I know that are still here, but I never see them in Discord. But they're still here playing the game every day, right? But I mean, 7 years they're not in Discord every single day. Like I wish it was a little bit more like where people kind of have like leaders, like what you did,
Mm-hmm.
today. That would be great. But we probably get there. Again, sometimes it's a numbers thing, like we have people that, they come in, they get excited, they get involved and then some people are natural leaders, like you're one of them, Gigs. You're there to, like try to improve things and lead people, to doing better things. I would say Jangles and Jimmy both are in that boat too, even though
Yeah.
Jimmy tends to write a lot. Jimmy, Jimmy,
I've
Jimmy,
seen fans
Jimmy,
and
Jimmy loves to write those long messages.
yeah, well, even the other day, Jangles just jumped into, he started a call because he'd checked the message or something, and then next minute later there was like 200 notifications between me and Jimmy. He's just like, I'm just going to call you guys and figure out what's going on.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know it's yeah the old school way of I find that a lot too in the because I touch a lot of different areas on the team, of course, and these guys are all the stuff doing stuff. So generally, it's just pinging me on a thought or me pinging them on something I noticed or saw. But a lot of times it gets into those, like long-winded explanations. It's like, shit, I just want to pick up the phone and talk. Like, I don't want to sit there typing, forever trying to explain myself. So,
And some things I find it easier just to discuss, like you kind of miss context and sarcasm and stuff like that when it's just written. Um,
yeah. Oh,
I think,
yeah.
I think, a benefit in both, right? Some people learn in different ways, they interact in different ways. So it's nice. Okay, here's the article. You can go read it when you're ready. Come and listen. But some people will only read. Some people will only listen. And so the more mediums that you've covered to kind of get to people, the easier, right? Some people are like,
Yeah.
nobody listens to me. It's like, well, you put it in one place that barely anybody goes. It's like, well, what do you expect?
Yeah. And I'm excited. Like, number one, I'm excited you're doing this show. And I'm also excited about, the amount of people that I called you a leader, which is true. There's a lot of leaders that we have out there right now. I mean, in different ways too. Like just look at the stuff that like Gold Matters does every day, or what Brave Tofu and Affliction do. Like they're spending their time and their money making like full length. They're not full length, but 2 to 10 minute videos, right? Like I mean, there's just a lot of stuff. You got Tails, working on he basically manages the whole Twitch thing for us. You got Bulldog that pulled out that whole concept with the Grand Prix, right? Which has been, in my opinion, a very good success. Like it's
Yeah,
it's given us a nice opportunity to showcase our game to a lot of people that didn't know about it, right? So I love that, the community is finding their way, into all these little nooks and crannies of the world, right? And I think it's just a matter of time before it gains momentum. Like I actually think we are in the process of it gaining momentum. Like when you actually step back and look at it, like there is a lot of people doing a lot of different things, which is very motivating. Having said that, we're still a relatively small, like we have roughly 6,000, 7,000 players, right? So that's in the scheme of the world, it's still a very small, segment. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, like you said, like so much has changed. If you asked me this time a year ago, I would have had a very different answer about where I think Splinterlands is going. Um, yeah, it's a massive change so quickly. And yeah, like you said, so much is going on. And that's kind of what DAOs are meant to be, right? Like DAOs are a collection of people working together on a common idea and they're trying to make it happen. And so like, having these people go off and do things is great. And hopefully formalizing some more of this stuff with the DAO and, bringing this platform is going to enable more people. Like I want to help support people that want to champion different changes. So one that I've got, I did my post recently about tournaments. There's been a handful of people done posts about tournaments. And so hopefully the next week or two, I'm going to do a live one of these with hopefully a few of them. And we can just discuss tournaments more, not necessarily have an outcome or a particular proposal, but like, what are some of the big things that we want to see change? What are we hoping to achieve out of tournaments? And then, what are our next step forwards? Because there's a lot of different ideas on tournaments and how they've gone. And, I spent many, many years playing big TCG tournaments all over the world, which, it'd be amazing to see some of that kind of happen here as well. We're like just on the cusp, I feel, for being able to do amazing things with our tournaments to bring in a lot of new players and just get a lot of eyes on them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And my history with tournaments go all the way back to the very beginning. There's certain things that I don't like about our tournament system that go way, way, way back. And you know, so at the end of the day, I definitely support a tournament rework. but I also support a tournament rework done with collaboration of a bunch of different groups of people, right?
Yeah.
That's the part that's the little asterisk, that hopefully people have, right? Because sure, everybody can look at tournaments and say they can be better. I mean, it's pretty obvious, right? So, of course, they can be better. The devil is trying to figure out like exactly
Yeah.
which thing is more important, which to prioritize. And again, it takes just a serious look at it, and I mean, there are some people that um, some people that like they don't want to change no matter what, like status quos. For instance, like if I'm benefiting from the system,
Hmm.
then maybe I just want to keep it the way it is, and I get all grouchy if it changes. But I don't think most of the SPS people are in that boat. I think most
Not.
PS people like, hey, yeah, it's could be better, right? Let's give up a little to make it better, right? I actually believe that's the case. Like I think whales all the way down to minnows, most people would like that, but then the narrative isn't that, right? The narrative is, oh, they just want to protect this or that, whatever it happens to be. And I really just don't think that's the case. I just don't think
Yeah.
people are taking the time to do what you're doing. You make a post, you try to talk to people, you get the people that are also interested, you share the ideas, like Vuctus, for instance, is working on something. I'm sure you have shared it with him. I know Eagles, focused on it. I know uh, Deuce Crypto, is focused on it. Garut,
Hmm.
so even though people are coming at it from different angles, unless the people, I don't have any sympathy for people that are just defending the status quo when the status quo doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like it would be different if it works, but if it
Hmm.
doesn't work, let's make it better. That should
Yeah.
be the way people think.
Well, and like if they defend the status quo, it's like, okay, what elements do you like, and how can we, if it still works, how can we make sure we can include that going forward? But just trying to block it is nonsense.
Man, and a lot of times it's misperception, right? Like in the case of the one with Weagle, it was people like interpreted the way it was going to work is that like gold foils are going to lose their value. I mean, I got a huge gold foil account. Like I didn't interpret it that way. Like I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't see where this affects me at all that we don't pay out those 8 people tournaments, right? Like most of my tournaments are played, with 100 people or whatever the numbers are, right? So I didn't even see where that was going to be an issue, but obviously some people did. And so the question was like, okay, was the intention to take away from the gold foil people? I don't think it was, but that's what they saw, right? Like in their mind, that's what that was going to happen. So I think it just is, like I said at one point, it's just really just people getting together and trying to see, oh, well, this is what you're worried about. Okay, we can handle that this way. So it could be something as simple as whatever we take away in a particular tournament, if it got canceled, gets put back in the same, group, right? The same foil or whatever the payout is. So that way people aren't like flipping out that,
Yeah.
this is like a subversive way to undo their rewards, which I don't think was the case, but that's how it was perceived.
Yeah. Well, and another way as well is we could just go, okay, well, if we're not filling 64 spots, let's split it and just do 232 instead. There's so many different ways. But and like,
Yeah, there really is. I mean,
yeah.
in fact, you could do a whole probably new show on tournaments, honestly, with all the different ways it could be done. Like I've seen, like one of the classic ones, I say I go way back. I'll give you my little pet peeve if you want to know how I think as a DAO voter,
Yep.
not as a team guy, but as a DAO voter. I think the like if you had a tournament and you could pick the the bracket you played, so to speak, or so I want to play diamond, right? Well, if I want to play diamond, then I'm not going to be able to play bronze, right? Or I'm not going to be able to play silver. I want to play the diamond, right? And then you may say, I want to play silver. Okay, well, if you're going to play silver, you can't play diamond and you can't play bronze, right? And if that tournament had, like 5 components to it, right? So let's call it the Christmas festival, spectacular, right? And you picked, which group are you going to be in, right? And then you play in that group, right? Like whatever it is. So I'll be in the Christmas spectacular, diamond group, and you'll be in the gold group or whatever. Like, and
Mhm.
and then it's one group of cards, that you're playing against other people that are in the same category as you, with the same rule sets as you, the same, balance as you. And it's not me taking my account and playing diamond, gold, silver, bronze, and novice, right? Across the board, right? Like
You're not
I
playing it
never,
like, yeah,
I
okay.
never liked it when the concept was, and I'll just say it, Aggie, when I brought this up in the old days, Aggie's like, well, people bought their cards. They should be able to play them. And then
Mhm.
it became like a right, over time. Like it's a right to do that. Like I own the cards, I should be able to play them. And then, of course, what happens is, well, you buy the cards and then embedded in the price of the cards is the fact that you can play your cards in five different tournaments, right?
Mhm.
Like I can pick diamond, I can pick gold, I can play them all, right? And
Mhm.
then what happens is then I go find a scholar. That scholar's really good, and then nobody else has ever got a chance to compete because
Mhm.
they're become like literally pros, right? Which is
Mhm.
not even necessarily a problem. It's just, can we get a little more participation, right?
Yeah.
Like can we let anybody else into it, right? And so in my opinion, it should always be like the Christmas grand gala tournament. You should have to pick one of the five, and then
Yeah.
that way you'll have a bunch of people in all the groups participate, because they're not like, I can't compete against Dave's account, like,
Yeah.
that
But
that
like,
kind of.
I see that as almost splitting the population, right? So like at the moment we've kind of got that, but you can enter every single tier, right? And so you want it to be just like, okay, and we've got Monday is our conclave only tournament. You pick which one you're in. That's it. I think
Yep.
that's more doable when we have a bigger player base, but at the moment, yeah, yeah,
But it's the chicken or the egg, Keegs.
yeah, yeah,
In
yeah,
other words, how do we know, right? Like if all of a sudden we had it that way, you
yeah.
know, you would say, well, who's going to play the bronze tournament, right? Like we don't have
Well,
enough people to play the bronze tournament, but I know we tried. Like maybe we
yeah,
do.
but
Maybe
like what
some
we do,
people
right?
will for the first time in their life play a tournament.
Yeah, but like so we're not adding anything new. We're restricting how many places you can play it. Is what I see in
Well,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I'm
so that's
saying you're restrict on. I mean, I'm saying, look, number one, I'm not a binary guy. I hate binary.
yeah,
I'm not saying like every tournament should be this way, but I'm saying like there should be a
mhm,
tournament. In my opinion, there should be a tournament that acts that way, right?
yeah.
Like
Okay.
when the golfers go play in the
Mhm,
whatever the Masters, in Augusta, they go enter one tournament. They can't play in five tournaments at the same
mhm,
weekend, right? They
yeah,
have to pick which one they're playing.
yeah. Interesting. So I'll give you an example at like Flesh and Blood, for example. So at a calling level event, these are kind of usually ones that I try travel to. There's like the main event that starts at 9 a.m. But then basically every hour after that, there's some form of event that's firing. Now you can't be in the main event and play the other event because, especially in person, you can only be at one table at a time. Um, but then but like some people, they'll maybe play half a dozen tournaments over that weekend, and especially like if you play the main event and you've lost your first three, there's no way you're going to make day two anyway. So they just drop, jump into the next one, and away you go. Um,
Well, that's a little different style because that's
yeah,
like almost like a sit and go type style, which I love that too. Like I'm not, like I said, I'm not a binary guy. Like I think I know my way will get more participation. So if we had those kind of tournaments, we would have more participation. But having said that, I'm not saying every tournament has to
yeah.
be that way. Like maybe
I,
even
what,
just 10% of the tournaments would be
yeah.
that way.
Why do you think would have more participation? Because at the moment they can enter all of them. So at the moment people are entering all of them.
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that don't enter tournaments because they know they can't win.
That's yeah. That's more a mindset thing. I don't think necessarily we should be changing the system to cater for that. Like,
No, but I'm just saying, like, okay,
yeah, I get,
you're a bronze player.
yeah,
You just got the Splinterlands. They have these things called tournaments,
hmm,
right? Are you gonna play like maybe you play the first time and you just get smoked,
yeah,
right? Because you're gonna play against
too
my
expensive.
account,
Yeah,
right? And Bubkey's account, and
yeah.
and the
But
best
nothing,
of the best, right?
you,
And they got like zero chance of even like
yeah,
why would they even bother?
yeah. Yeah, I mean that's and but you're always going to have that when you start, right? Because it doesn't matter. You might have like we had when we had leagues, you might have those specialists that go, okay, I'm just going to play silver, and then they've got max for silver, and any new player is always going to struggle with that. There's always an issue with tournaments. We have it
Yeah, but I don't.
we have it with our
I'm.
weekly
I'll put
tournament.
it. I'll put it this way. I'm confident that, like when I was a kid, we didn't
Yeah,
have our games were real games,
yeah,
like bowling. They weren't virtual games on a computer, right?
yeah,
So like we would go bowling, right?
yeah,
And when we bowled, we had, couples league for the parents, right? We had the men's league, we had the women's league, we had the teenager league, the kids league, right?
yeah,
Can you imagine how excited it would be for a kid to have to play against the male, the best male, player every single week? I mean, they pretty soon would just stop showing up because they would never
yeah,
win. And like
yeah,
it's designed to, yes, you're going to give like the top 100 accounts,
yeah,
like good payout, but that is not scalable,
yeah, yeah.
right?
So
That is not scalable.
we need
You,
like more casual kind of tournaments where players can win, but it's a lot more low stakes.
it
Um,
can be cosmetics for that matter.
and
I don't even think it's about the money necessarily. I'm just
yeah,
saying, like you get in there and you got to play against the bad witch as a bronze player, you're going to lose.
yeah,
Not because I'm a good player, because I got a scholar that's good, right?
yeah,
And he will finish in the top 15 or 20 for sure,
yeah.
right?
But
And so will the other 15 or 20 that are there because of the same names for years.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't think those changes to those tournaments will help with that because you're still always going to have that big bad bully in whatever league. And I think that's yeah, it's an interesting thing that we have to deal with Splinterlands because it's always an issue as well with like scholars at doing well in ranked. It's like you're mostly just mad because they can play better than you. Really, it seems like what it comes down to. Like there's some extra reasons, but there's always going to be somebody that's better than you, and like some people don't seem super okay with that. They're all or they'll try find any reason, go, oh, that's why they're beating me. Let's get rid of it so they can't do that, and then I might start winning. It's like, well, just get good, get better at it. I don't know. I've
Well,
seen like
yeah, I would say this. I understand your point of view.
yeah,
I agree with you. That does happen a lot where people can't win. They just ascribe
yeah,
flaws, to the system and claim it's rigged and blah blah blah. I don't think it's rigged,
yeah,
right? I just think it's set up or it's designed in such a way to reward, like I have to buy the gold foil versions of most of the key cards, right, to stay competitive, which is a feature, right? That's a good thing, right? That's people are going to buy packs for that reason and stuff like that. But having said that, the negative of that is you should figure out a way. Let's say you keep everything the way it is. Why can't we set up a new tournament, just a new thing? Again, not one damn thing changes with what we do now, but
mhm,
create like an event, like again, the Christmas spectacular event, and just try it and see if we have more people. Like you said, I
mhm.
don't think we'll have more people play. I'll be willing to bet you we will have more people play.
Well, it's just yeah. I guess the way that I see it is like most people that are playing tournaments already are entering any ones that they can, and so now you're just saying that they can enter less of them. So I don't see how.
No, no, I'm saying there would be a tournament called the Christmas Spectacular,
Yeah,
and you have to pick which one,
sure,
which
sure.
bracket do you want to play of that? That's all.
Yeah,
I'm not
so
saying change anything with any of
yeah,
the other one. Like I'm
yeah.
not trying to take
I,
anything away from anybody.
I agree. If we do that, sure. But I think if we had a Christmas spectacular at diamond, at gold, at silver, at bronze, that people could play all of them, we'd probably have more participation in that than
I'll
that.
bet
But
you a deck. I'll bet you a deck. It wouldn't.
I'm keen. I'm keen. Let's make this happen.
All right. So I'll bet you a deck. If we did it, if we
Yeah,
did it both ways,
yeah,
I bet you would have more participation if people essentially played where their deck was,
yeah.
supposed to be, so to
They
speak.
can play one instead of my play anyone's.
Yeah, yeah. Like Jimmy loves the
All
Silver
right.
League, so Jimmy's going to play the Silver League,
Yeah.
right?
See,
That's
I'll
it.
play the Silver League, but I'll also play all the others. But yeah, I'm down with this. We'll make this happen.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll bet you one deck, man, and we'll waive the tourney creation fee if you want to make it. We can make the payout small if you want. Like
yeah,
get with Clay and see what he can do there. But
yeah,
yeah, I'll bet you personally one deck. I think more people will play
yeah.
that. And again, the goal should be to increase the participation. And again, let me also be clear because like if people listening to this, sometimes they sometimes don't hear everything, right? They only hear a snippet or somebody like pulls it out. I am not saying that every tournament has to be this way.
Mhm.
Like I'm not saying like
Yeah,
that's the only solution. Like this is just one way to increase participation.
yeah.
You're disagreeing with me, so I'm cool with checking it
It's
out.
really
Say what?
just technicalities, really. But I agree. Like, I think, part of my proposal is actually saying we should have a range of different types of tournaments to cater for a broad range of players. Like the way what I see at the moment is like casual play, but there's no real competition. I want to see the competitive player in me. I want to see competitive tournaments. But yeah,
Yeah.
range of tournaments.
Like you and Deuce Crypto, for instance, Jimmy and Jangles, you guys are like cutthroat, competitors. You want to play, you don't want to play against me, right? Like you don't want a tournament where no matter what the cards are, why would you want to play against me? Because you'll cream me. You want to beat the guy that, is equal to you or could be equal to you, and but you want to show that you're better, right?
Yeah.
Like to me, like that's great, right? That kind of player is awesome.
Mhm.
We definitely have that covered. So I ain't worried about that, right?
Yeah.
So my point is like, sure, let's definitely keep that. Let's not undo that,
Mhm.
right? So I
Are you
100% believe that.
casual?
But I also don't think that everybody's got to be a professional. Like when
Yeah.
I went to play bowling on Saturday,
Mhm.
as a 7-year-old kid, right? Like I didn't have to play against a grown man who, played every single day of his life, for 20
Mhm.
years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like I played against other kids.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's good. And yeah, like even the flesh and blood events, they've got such a that wide range. At a calling, there's the main few events that are like professional, blah blah blah. They're all the competitive players in that. But then you got all the side events as well, and like some of them they're the random formats, and some of those they're actually getting pretty busy and pretty packed. But then sometimes also you do end up against a top player washed out, and they're playing some random sealed pack thing at 3 p.m. You wouldn't expect to play him there, but it's a lot more casual environment as well.
Yeah,
Um,
and by the way, I love like the variability of tournaments. Like I used to make tournaments. I don't know if I think I did it before you were here, but
yeah,
I ran a little project called Spring Training. And
yeah,
do you remember that? Were you here for that? Yeah. So I made my own versions of the cards, like ran them through
yeah,
a way to change the look of the card, but it was still like our cards, and we
yeah,
gave them out as prizes, just NFT type prizes on wax. And we had a crew of people that played every single week, and we had fun, and it was good. So I know how to make the tournaments. I have experience with how that went as an outside person,
mhm,
and so I agree, like keeping the Deuce Cryptos and the Keegs and Jangles like entertained and competitive and like mean something and payouts wise, like there's a group of people that it's all about the money, right?
mhm,
So they want to make sure that their payouts are there. I don't want to take away any of that, right?
yeah,
Like in my opinion, those are the things that are important. But could we have a tournament where we just gave out skins, for instance? and let new people play that,
Mhm.
stuff like that. Like to me, those are the kind of things we should be thinking in addition to what we're doing. I love the idea. I think you mentioned the like the satellite type, situation where you have to qualify for something. I
Yeah,
love that concept too, right? That
yeah,
like that's another way to approach it because, once a guy qualifies, then he doesn't play anymore, right? Like he's, you play, you qualify, you move to the next level. Then the next one
mhm,
you also, you're not going to replay and requalify. You already qualified. So
yeah,
then it like gives people like two
right,
chances or three chances to qualify. And that's
yeah,
another way that I think is important.
yeah, yeah. I agree. I think, yeah, there's so much, and I think as well with those kind of style events, that's where you can really start like telling these stories and these narratives and having, like a lot more content. I feel the kind of qualifier stuff that leads to a lot more kind of content, and I think that can also be really good for like attracting some big players, and like, yeah, we can do some cool content stuff with that. That's what I'm really like. That's what I'm thinking with some of these competitive tournaments. Like, how can we make these like those marketable moments, and how can we building better engagement? If we can build up hype about players, get maybe more people interested in trying to qualify, and yeah, there's so much, you know.
Yeah. And honestly, I think we now have tools that we can do that too with, like for instance, look at all the different rule sets we have and
Yeah.
the depth of the card sets, and I mean, like there's so many fun, cool things that we can do. And I think like the Thanksgiving and the Halloween, like rule sets that we threw in just for that. I mean,
Mhm.
that was great because like people didn't have a chance to prepare. Like it's not something that they memorized. They had to learn on the fly, right?
Mhm.
Like, how does this work? What's the best team? Like, oh, you got to rethink it, right? And then the
Stuff
guy
like that.
who's like a little more professional and a little better player, he's going to figure it out faster and he's
Mhm.
going to be, he's going to have a quicker, better strategy, which is part of what you want in a competition is who's going to be the guy that figures it out the quickest.
Yeah.
So,
I'd be thinking with those rule sets, it could be quite cool to have them as like jackpot sets. So once they've rotated out of like the high frequency, maybe if it was like 0.1% that the bloodlust one comes back, that'd be like, oh hey, look, I got it. Like, just any chance you can do more jackpot stuff, right? And it doesn't have to be frequent at all. But I think that could be quite cool. But yeah, I
We're
have really
actually
liked.
we're at I can give you another piece. We are working on a thing we're calling missions.
Yeah.
It's not it's not the highest priority right now, meaning we have other things that we're going to do first, but we're pretty far along in the missions and it would be very similar to that. Like when you get a mission, it's not going to be easy, right?
Mhm.
But it'll be something special and different, and then we'll actually have separate pricing for that and a separate
Yeah.
way to, a separate way to get it. So I'm looking forward to that, but it's probably first, later first quarter would be my
Yeah.
guess.
I like that. I think so. That's kind of complete tangent to it, but semi-related. Is so you said that this missions is coming. So I think what
Uh-huh.
we've had is we used to get a lot more of like forward thinking of what the company is going to work on, and great in some ways, terrible in some ways. So often people are like, they said they're going to do this and you're expecting it, and you don't do it, and there's a fallout. But I think having a rough idea of kind of what way that the team is going for some things might make it less controversial because people think, they're not doing anything, but actually you guys are doing heaps, and there's a lot that like is coming, and like some people get like worked up about something that actually, if you just wait 3 months, the team's already working something on that quietly in the background. But yeah, like what do you feel about kind of maybe not roadmaps, but some kind of indication of what might be priorities or what we could expect, or do you guys want to play it closer to the chest more?
Um, I think that the answer to that lies in the environment you're in. In
Mm,
other words, if we're in an environment where people are doubting that we can deliver, then I think it's better to, prove it as opposed to talk about it. Like I'm a big believer in show people what you're going to do and instead of
mhm,
like talk about it. But having said that, I also agree that at some point, when you feel that people do have confidence that you're going to do it, right, then it's good to give them a bigger picture, right? Like, so for instance, Matt talked about the uh,
Avatars.
Avatar yesterday, right? So, like when you look at Matt talk about, it, he's like a little kid, right? Like honestly, he's like super excited. And then you have other people like, what the hell do I care about an avatar for, right? Like I play a game, it's called Splinterlands. It's a TCG. Why do I care about an avatar? And so you don't know why Matt's, like, did he lose his mind, or is there actually something that's you don't know yet? And the answer is there is something you guys don't know. So the
Mhm.
point is it would be good if we could like paint a big picture about it, right? And say, hey, here's what's coming. Not only that, but here's that's a proof of concept, and where that leads is to this and this and this. And I'm dying to actually, like get that out, right? Like I would love to like paint that picture for people, but there is that, balance between it's pretty good, it's pretty exciting, and is the community ready to like understand, like, in other words, there's so many people like you put something out, there's still a group of people that like they put it out and they're like, yeah, 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 like whatever, you're never going to do this, or you know what I mean? Like so sometimes you just got to get that credibility. And like I said, the credibility, that's kind of the phase that I've been on is, look, I'm just going to throw out all that negative stuff that people are saying in my head. Like I'll pay attention to it, but I'm not going to respond to it. I'm going to respond by doing things, right? So, you know, at this point, hopefully people are starting to understand that we're going to get a lot of stuff done. Like whatever 2026 is, I'm pretty sure will be bigger than 2025. So if you thought we did a lot in 2025, I can assure you that we're much, much more finely tuned than we were the day I got here. Right? Like there is many more things that we're doing at a much more rapid pace because it takes a while to get the use to work together. But now we're in that spot. So that's why you're starting to see a lot of things being delivered. Having said that, there are things that we know, which we've said, like there's going to be a brawl, there's going to be the survival mode, which by the way, survival mode, in my opinion, is very important, the survival rework, because it's gonna be at number one, an unbelievably great tool, right? That if successful will enable us to do a lot of things, right? So I don't think hardly anybody understands the significance. Maybe you do because you talked already about how these are like tools and infrastructure that we're building. In my opinion, that's what that is, right? That's going to be a tool that we can use in many different ways, right, to improve the number of people that enjoy our game, right? Because we will be able to provide more than just one way or the other, right? That's going to give us a lot of variability. But the thing we're working on, that again, going back to the avatar thing, like that's going to be, I think, I don't know if I use the word revolutionary, but certainly I think there are going to be people that are going to be like, whoa, I can't believe Splinterlands is doing that, right? So I think it's going to be pretty well received. Can't really talk about it yet because Matt wants to wait for the reveal, right? So, that's as far as I can go here. But once we reveal it, then it's like a proof of concept, right? Like everything that we do, you can assume that if it's successful, it's going to lead to something else. Like I'm
Yes.
not just doing something, one time and that's it. Like no, we're doing this, you're going to be able to see like, oh, cool, you can do that. And then what could this lead to is the next question, right? And that's where you're going to like really like want to be excited about Splinterlands in the future because where
Yeah.
that could lead could be huge.
Yeah. Well, it's just like, you did the weekly draw in Frontier first, and because it's a low barrier way to test it, we tested it, it worked well. All right. Into ranked it goes. I see it being very similar to the same with the leagues.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
And maybe people need to know that more. Maybe like, or maybe it might just be like, hey, we're trying this here, but there could be future. and that gets people excited and speculating and all that kind of nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we need more Keegs. Just so you know, we need guys like you that are out there that are like explaining the implications of this, right? Like, like, yeah, we did free to play. What did we learn, right? Well, we learned number one, probably the most important thing, we learned that people want to play for a reward,
Mhm.
right? Like people will show up to play if they get, a card, right? And they own it and they can sell it and they can trade it and they can move it around and all that kind of stuff. Like we learned, right? Like that is, I mean, we still have more players in Frontier mode than we do all of our other modes combined. I mean, still, right? Now, having said that, is it as high a quality as our premium version? Hell no, right? Like the premium version has got the Keegs of the world, the Deuce Cryptos, the Jangles, the best of the best, right? That really understand all that. So it certainly is not a game that's in depth, and the high end guy isn't going to want to play Frontier mode, but it's a
Mhm.
great onboarding place. But again, like you can understand the implications of like, oh, we introduce something there and it works, then we can introduce it other places. And um, for one thing that I think is another thing that I think is significant that we did is the sort of the lottery type thing that we did,
Yeah.
right? Like people feel like it's fair when they have a chance at something,
Mhm.
right? So, Buctus has got a lot, or Brave Tofu's got a lot, right? Of entries, but I mean, how much money do they got in their deck? How much SPS do they have staked? Like they should get a lot. But the guy that comes in and just has a little, he still's got a chance, right? And you can look in the thing and see, a guy with, whatever, 20 fortune draws during the week won something, right? Like there's a chance, right? And I think that's a dynamic that, is going to be helpful to, creating that energy or endorphins or whatever, like adrenaline, I guess would be the better word, create adrenaline that people people like that. I mean, some people don't like that, but there's a lot of people that do.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So I guess that's a long-winded way of saying nothing, but I will say that when the avatars are out, you can have me on your show and we'll talk all about the implications of that. And
Mm,
in my opinion, it's it's going to be a really big deal, like as big as anything we've done this year.
yeah.
In fact, I think it'll be bigger than anything we've done this year.
Even
The
what we saw
potential.
on Hall was more than what most people were thinking the Avatar project was going to be.
Say that again. I'm sorry.
So what we saw in the town hall, that was more than what most people thought the Avatar project was going to be anyway. So I'm very much looking forward to the extra stuff that is you guys are working on.
Yeah, yeah. I think I'll put it this way: not everybody is going to like every aspect of everything we do,
Mhm.
but I think that a thinking person, the Keegs type person, in our game is going to be able to go from point A to point B and draw that conclusion of what the impact could be. And I think that's going to be pretty motivating.
I feel we just need like more people like speculating and talking about that kind of stuff. After sounds pretty good with it, and there's a few others, and maybe I miss more on streams. I find it hard to keep up with all the streams. But back in the day, we used to have a lot more people doing a lot more commentary. So maybe we need to try and get that. There's one thing I've also thought about is like, how can we incentivize or, what can we do for content creators? But that's a whole nother realm. But I think
Yeah.
probably here's a good point to wrap it up. I've already had you for about 2 hours, and I'm sure we could talk for many more hours, even just those Team Possible calls, right? So often they
Yep.
push that 4 hour mark. Um,
Yep.
is there anything you want to cover off before we end up here?
No, I mean, well, number one, yeah, I would like to say thank you, for taking your time to do these shows, to even want to start it up for all the things you do in the community. You're very engaged, very always trying to make things better, and I think that's unbelievable, and I'm super appreciative of that, Keegs. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and yeah, I like the continuous improvement. That's yeah, I like to tweak and build on things, and yeah, I we've got a effort place to do that.
Yep, agreed. And let's get more Keegs, man.
Maybe not.
Let's take Keegs and try to lead to get more. Take the Keegs that leads people to lead to get more
Yeah.
Keegs, right?
We don't need any Keeg with a Q, that's for sure. It's crazy. He's even already updated the profile picture and everything. I thought I might have got a couple weeks breathing room by like updating the profile picture, but it's ridiculous.
You're talking about Jangles?
Nah, the fake Keegs. There's a fake
Oh,
Keeg.
the fake Keegs. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's why like maybe we don't
Yeah.
need more Keegs, but we need more similar.
I think somebody did me too the other day. So
Yeah,
yeah, it really is irritating.
yeah.
By the way, I did talk to Jangles, and he did say he was going to watch the show. So that's a good thing.
This show.
Another one. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. He said he. I talked to him earlier, and he said he's got the show, and I said, "Are you going to be able to be on it?" He's like, "Nah, I got something he had to do for work," and I'm like, "So are you gonna, watch it when it comes out?" He goes, "Hell yeah, I'm gonna watch it." So
Yeah, nice.
honestly, Keegs, I think you're doing great, and
It's,
yeah, I mean, I think I love what you're doing. Honestly, I love that you're doing it. I like how you get involved. You roll up your sleeves, and seriously, it's very, very helpful for the community. And like I said, I really do. I want a lot of guys. Like, it's not about saying yes, I like that. Like, I don't want to hear that. But I also don't want to hear no every time either. I just want honesty, man. And you're honest, right? So as far as I'm concerned, you're a thinker, you're smart, you're a leader, and you care, right? So as far as I'm concerned, like, let's get like 10,000 of you.
yeah, sounds good to me. I'd love to see a realm full of that kind of
All
mindset.
right.
Yeah. All right, Dave. Well, thank you very much. I'm sure I'll have you in another one sometime soon. And yeah, I don't mind being thrown under the bus. You got to give everybody grief the first time you come on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Now you're gonna not let me live that down. So I
Oh,
get it.
yeah. There's many things I think a lot of people, we won't let people live down. That's for sure.
All right.
Yeah, this has been Under the Hood. We're looking at doing more and more of this kind of stuff. If you have thoughts or feedback, would love to hear it. If you want some support trying to bring a proposal and idea to life, get in touch and watch out for the live tournament one that I'm going to try to do in a week or so's time. I'll try see if I can wrangle my way into the announcement page so more and more people can see that. But yeah, you've been listening to Under the Hood. Catch you next time.
Under a roar sky so wide, midnight potions brewed to buy the time, the secrets, the whisper